Hello and welcome to Wilson Center Now, a production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. I'm John Molesky. My guest today is Paterne Mombe, a Southern Voices Network for Peacebuilding Scholar with the Wilson Center's Africa program. Father Mombe is also currently pursuing his Ph.D. from Tangaza University in Nairobi, and with that he's just adding to an impressive list of academic credentials that also includes his authorship of several books. He joins us today to discuss his Wilson Center project called Policy Options for Agricultural Extension in a Post-Conflict Context, the example of the Central African Republic. Paterne, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I mean that your list of credentials is stunning. One man with a lot of academic credentials, and you're working on another one.
Yeah. I've happened to have a chance to join an institution, like the Jesuit institutions, which is engaging in many ways and so on. So we've had the opportunity to work, to write, to publish, to reach out to people in the field, all this together.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
And I want to, before we dig into this specific example that you focused on, the Central African Republic, I want to ask you about the bigger picture. In an article you wrote recently, you talked about the state of global food security in decline globally. In the last 3 years, the trend has been downward in terms of security. And you point out that 20% of Africans are living with food insecurity. What's happening? Why is that taking place?
Yes, Central Africa. Central Africa. We are talking about Africa. In the world, let's say, for the past, there was a decade during which we were sure that we were kind of getting out of hunger and reduce hunger to zero by 2030. And for the past 3 years, the scenario seemed to change. And at the root of this, one of the drivers which has been observed is the situation of conflict in the world, which has been increasing, and also the impact of this conflict on population, basically on food security, more than, out of the numbers affected by the food security, more than half have populations who are affected by the food insecurity. So we see that there's like a link between this ongoing conflict and the situation of hunger in the world. So the world is looking closely at this situation, which is kind of a big challenge, basically when it goes against the set goal of the Sustainable Development Goals to achieve zero hunger by 2030.
2030.
So, yeah.
And the term food insecurity, unpack that for us. What are we talking about specifically? Are we talking about everyday people wake up and they don't know if they'll have access to adequate amounts of food?
Yes, it's about access. It's about availability. It's about the ability of having a balanced diet.
So not just quantity, quality as well.
Quantity and quality. Yeah.
So you wrote a piece, Dying from Hunger on Fertile Land, which reminds me of the notion now we say that geography is destiny. And you talk about a country, Central African Republic, that has all of the makings of being an agricultural powerhouse. And yet, geography is not destiny in this regard because people are suffering with food insecurity. And it's because of the conflict.
Exactly. And not only the conflict, I would say first.
Which has been underway since 2014, correct?
Yeah, 2014. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We for sure, conflict is playing a big role today, but I would say there's a kind of a vicious cycle which we need to look into in this context, in particular in the context of Central African Republic. There have been policies, measures taken by the government with regard to agriculture, and some reports back to 1966 by a famous agronomist, René Dumont, who was invited by the President Biden to assess the situation of the country. He stressed how the orientation of the policy in the country towards agriculture is bad because the tendency was more to import food, very few investment in agriculture, and at the end of the day, we have an underperforming agriculture, underdeveloped agriculture. In the 1970s, there have been also, basically that was a time run by Bokassa. There were also mechanisms or measures taken which were counterproductive. It has affected agriculture performance. And with it, we end up having the 70% of population depending on agriculture to live in a fragile situation or condition. And they are mostly poor. Although they are farmers, subsistence farming, but they are mostly facing situations of hunger, and so they are frail, vulnerable in this way. And all these are drivers. The poverty and hunger are drivers of conflict. And as a result, the country has been experiencing, I was going to say every decade, a situation of conflict. And when the conflict takes place, the sector of the economy which is mostly affected is again agriculture. It has had a big impact on the country. The recent crisis, which has started in 2012, has kind of had the major impact ever on agriculture. It was shown that the capacity of the production or the production of the country dropped by a factor of 65%.
In what period of time?
That's from 2012 to 2016 when
that's falling off the cliff, 65%.
Exactly, yeah. So it's really a dramatic situation, a big impact on agriculture, which may even call on new or future crisis if proper action is not taken.
You mentioned a lack of adequate investment. Talk about the role of external players, whether it's the IMF or the World Bank or another country that may be investing. Is there any potential there?
Yes. International community is always there to help countries take right measures, although the intervention is also subject to the policy, local internal policy. The World Bank, for instance, have been very close in supporting Central African Republic. In 1992, for instance, they financed agriculture, basically extension, and created a particular platform to boost agriculture in Central African Republic. But this funding was interrupted in 1998. I'm not sure about what has been at the root of this interruption, but I know that was also a period where the country was undergoing one of its major crises, which started in 1996. At the moment, with this current crisis, the European organization, together with some countries like France, Italy, Netherlands, and the Belgium, and so on, are providing a special support to the government to build and rehabilitate centers to train young people in agriculture, so that because of the potential of the country and so on, if young people are trained, they are less subject to recruitment by armed groups. And then they can also participate in promoting agriculture. But the big question is, what about those who are already in the field, meaning the farmers, the rural populations who have been marginalized by the past measures and who have to face the impact of the protracted crisis which we are emerging from.
And what are the prospects for peace building?
Well, I think when you look at a fragile country and which has been in conflict and go back and so on, I will look at agriculture as the first measure. The experience or the history has told us that agriculture intervention or rehabilitation has always been a key factor in economic revival in countries that fall in conflict. We have the case from the Marshall Plan. You go to the case of Taiwan and the other conflicts and so on. Agriculture is key because it touches a big number of population. I say in the case of Central Africa, we are talking about 70%. So investing in agriculture, but in a specific intervention to make it work, because agriculture is large. When I say agriculture, I'm talking about crops, I'm talking about livestock, I'm talking about fishery, I'm talking about forestry. All these are many sectors and so on. And it's important to create the infrastructures to make it work, but it's also good to find a strategy to reach out to the populations who are in the sector, so that the investment can bear its fruit. And that's how, in my research, for instance, I insist on the need of rejuvenating agriculture extension, which I call agro-pastoral liaison service. It's good to rejuvenate because then it allows that close that connection with the populations which has been marginalized, the rural population, and kind of reviving the skills, with conflict,
Yes.
Movement of population, exposure to different situations. People lose even skills for farming, so they need to be prepared for that. And we are in a particular situation today where you have to think of the climate change and its impact and so on. So it's not about going back to the same kind of crops used and so on, but if it's possible to have kind of to promote smart, kind of climate smart approach and so on. These are all strategies or mechanisms which are useful today. So agriculture extension is particularly useful now because it will allow to give the skills needed to farmers so that they can increase their productivity, make more money out of it, and also being able to live in a peaceful community. Because
is there political support for the types of reforms that you're recommending?
Well, I know that the current government is working hard to reach out to really bring peace in the country. The situation is not easy. The demand is very high with the crisis, the war, and its impact and so on. In terms of ability, the government has no capacity as such. But from my experience and readings and so on, I can see that many organizations are providing help. The government has a kind of a roadmap for building peace, which it has built with the help of the international, the bank, the World Bank, and other international organizations, and they are doing their best to follow. There's the peace agreement, which was the first step. Critical peace deal which could allow the country to envision the possible reconstruction. This is there already, but I guess what is key now is to receive the concrete support. I've mentioned the support of European Union. I guess other bilateral partners and other institutions may already be there or would be coming, whatever the case. The importance, there's a great need of help from all corners possible. The country cannot make it without it.
So before we close, tell us about your experience with the Southern Voices Network and the Wilson Center.
Yes, I think it has been really a tremendous experience, a great exposure to knowledge, to relevant resources, to resourceful people. So it has really widened my perspective. It kind of also increases in me, I was going to say, the sense of peace builder. When you look at my background, I've been mostly in the social kind of work, and my Ph.D. is mostly on the side of development, so poverty reduction and so on. And I would say the added value of my experience here is that dimension of becoming more interested, more committed, and I was going to say ready to advocate, even to reach out to my government and get them go for the proper peace building process. When I say proper peace building process is because when I say that, I mean whatever has been done in the past. Central Africa has been undergoing many crises, and it is also a particular with it that every decade it goes back to conflict. It means the peace process has been missing a particular ingredient, which I think is agriculture. So as peace builder now, I can advocate for this inclusive approach in peace building by including those who have been marginalized from or have let out of from our peace deals, the rural population, reaching out to them and impacting on their activities in life will make a difference.
I know that's music to the Africa program's ears and
Okay.
to the Wilson Center. Taking it just out of academics and putting it into action.
Definitely.
So what's next? You head back to finish up your Ph.D.?
Yes, I'll be going back to Nairobi to continue and finish my Ph.D. Basically, finishing, I'm still a student in Ph.D., so I have to become a Ph.D. candidate. That is going to be in the next 3 or 4 months. Then collect data and then produce my finish with the program. But meanwhile, I'll be giving lecture. We have a Peace Institute in Nairobi. They are waiting for me for a lecture already, but also in Abidjan, I've been communicating with the director of SERAP to go and deliver. So my work here will be kind of, I mean, I'll use my work to reach out to students in our peace building schools in Africa, Ivory Coast and Nairobi, in Abidjan and Nairobi.
Well, excellent. Thank you. Congratulations on what you've done so far, and best of luck with what's next. And
thank you very much.
I should also tell our viewers and listeners that your work, if you come to the Wilson Center website and check the Africa program, you could find the work that Paterne has done while he's here, and also stay in touch with his future efforts. Thanks again. A pleasure to have you at the Wilson Center, and
all
have
the
you for
best.
today.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed this edition of Wilson Center Now, and that you'll join us again soon. Until then, for all of us at the Center, I'm John Molesky. Thanks for joining us.